I'm Marshall Herman, Assistant Director of Communications at the Virginia Department of Transportation. Thank you all for joining us for today's webinar that will focus on how to win big in the TransComm Skills Awards, which will feature a presentation by the TransComm Awards Subcommittee Chair. More on our speaker in a moment. Today's webinar is part of AASHTO's Committee on Transportation Communications, or TransComm's, mission to facilitate the sharing of best practices among state DOTs. The membership of this committee, led by Chair Diane Gutierrez-Scacchetti, Commissioner of the New Jersey DOT, is comprised of the top communications officials from each of the 52 AASHTO member departments. Among other activities, TransComm hosts an annual meeting that focuses on best practices, state-to-state collaboration, and professional development. This webinar is open to all, so feel free to share information on the series with friends and colleagues. The presentation will be recorded and uploaded to the TransComm website at communications.transportation.org, where you can learn about TransComm's regular webinar series and general TransComm information. Before we get started, a few things to keep in mind. First, please type your questions into the questions box. Our presenter will cover quite a bit of ground, everything from how to make a great nomination to how to judge the competition. But rest assured, we've planned a robust question and answer session, and we hope to get your questions when the presentation is finished. One more thing, throughout today's webinar, your lines will be muted, but please do not put us on hold as the music will begin playing over the presentation. Now on to today's speaker. Dawn Garner is Michigan DOT's Media Services Manager. She's been with MDOT for 17 years, working as a region communications rep prior to her current role overseeing the department's photo, video, and graphic design units. Over the past year, she's taken on a leadership role in MDOT's internal communications efforts. Prior to her time at MDOT, Dawn worked as a news TV director, anchor, and reporter, and is a proud graduate of Ohio University. She's been participating in TransComm for over a decade and serves as the group's awards subcommittee chair. Dawn, we're ready to learn. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Marshall. I have to say, when you mentioned if somebody puts us on hold and the music plays, music might be what's missing from this presentation. Maybe that wouldn't be the worst thing. I guess it depends on what your hold music is. But thank you for that, and thank you to everyone for joining us here today for the TransComm Skills Awards Contest webinar. This year, we didn't make a ton of changes to the categories like we've done over the past couple of years, but we do continue to monitor that as we look forward. So today we're going to go over some of the basic rules on how to enter, what the judges are looking for, making sure that your entry is in the right category, how things are judged and who's doing the judging. And then, as mentioned, we're going to answer any questions that you might have. But we're going to quickly go through the categories and spell out what qualifies in each category. That's in the written instructions, but if you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. So sometimes the hardest thing, Maggie, if you want to go to the next slide, thank you. Sometimes the hardest thing is knowing which category your entries should go into. And it's true that there may be some things that you're entering that might fit into more than one category. So those are the kind of questions that I get a lot as we move forward and people start entering their entries into the portal. And if you do have that question, please don't hesitate to ask. We do look each year at these categories. We've combined some, we've changed some around over the past few years. And typically we do that if a category gets fewer than 2 entries for multiple years in a row. That's a category we're probably going to look at. But we had really great participation. So thank you all who participated last year. And the categories you're going to see are going to look pretty familiar to you this year. We'll start by talking about Excel. The Excel category is the highest team honors, and the two Excel categories continue to be some of our most popular. So the Excel is something that's it's a campaign, really. It combines two or more techniques. It is broad-based communication effort. And when it says this is highly competitive, we get a lot of entries in these categories. And if you win this category, you're going to be asked to present. Actually, I don't know if we're going to do that since this year's will be virtual, but often we have presentations on these winning efforts at our annual conference. So these Excel is broken up into Excel with a consultant and Excel without a consultant. That's pretty self-explanatory. So if you have a consultant that's working with you, obviously, but a consultant really means if they consult on any component whatsoever of the campaign, and it also means whether it's paid or unpaid. So if you worked with a consultant, obviously it's category 1A, otherwise it's category 1B. Moving on to publications. We have three under print and electronic publications. There's internal publications, so that's things for an internal audience. External publications, which is for an external audience. And then the best of the rest category. This includes things like annual reports, posters, manuals, calendars. I know one year MDOT entered, we had created a calendar. So that's what best of the rest is. And if you have questions about internal versus external, I know some people create things for an internal audience that's shared externally. So if you need help kind of talking through what goes where as far as that goes, feel free to reach out to me on that. Next up is marketing advertising. There are three categories underneath here. Indoor, outdoor advertising. That is a graphical or three-dimensional display that can be placed inside or out. I know a lot of folks advertise at airports, or if you put a wrap on a bus or commuter rail or streetcar or anything like that. Those are all outdoor advertisings. If you put something on top of a news rack or a gas pump, any of that, billboards, that's goes into category 3A. 3B, print and electronic marketing, is just a single ad, and that can be in a publication or used in electronic venues. So if it's a Facebook ad, social media ads, all those sorts of things would go under category 3B. And then category 3C is interactive marketing. Interactive marketing, we're looking for things that you do that are engaging. It's a way that you engage with the public in an activity that educates or informs. It can be trade show. This is where your trade show exhibits or booths, or anything that encourages interaction. It'll be interesting to see if we get any entries in this category this year, since we didn't do any interacting over the past year because of social distancing and things. But we know a lot of you under normal circumstances are out there interacting with the public, so that's what that category is for. Moving on to the special events category. So there are transportation events, and then we have public awareness events. The transportation events category are events that highlight a specific transportation improvement. So these are your groundbreakings, ribbon cuttings, the kind of things that we do normally with more project-based are the transportation events. The public awareness events are events promoting informational public policy. So this is our work zone safety type of events, seatbelt usage, transportation funding, something we've been going through in a lot of different states over the past few years. So that's the difference between a transportation event and a public awareness event. All right, next we have what has become our biggest category and just number of subcategories, audio video production. So in this we have your video or radio public service announcement. That's pretty straightforward there. Your video production internal. So this is a video created and produced in-house for an internal audience. So this is training and education or employee news videos go in that category 5B. 5C is video production external. So those are videos, again, created and produced in-house, but for an external audience. 5D is video production long form. So that is any video that exceeds 7 minutes. Every year we get questions about this. We do try to stick to that 7 minute. It needs to be longer than 7 minutes. So we get some questions about that, but we've gone back and forth and talked and looked at the different entries, and we feel like that's a fair point, sort of. So anything beyond that. Video production series, that includes at least 3 separate videos as part of a series. And we ask that you do put those all together in one single file attachment when you submit that to us. And then the last one is audio production, which is a single audio production. It doesn't include the PSAs. If you do an audio PSA, we ask that you enter that in 5A instead of 5F. Category 6 is our writing category. Our good old-fashioned news releases are 6A. 6B, our article or guest blog with a DOT byline. Last year we did add the guest blog. We know some of you have your own blogs and we have a different category for that, but for guest blog we are looking at if you were a guest on somebody else's ongoing blog, not on your own blog. And then of course there with 6C is the actual blog. So we want you to have at least 6 blog entries from the eligible time period to submit for the best blog. I just realized when you say blog that many times in a row, it's a strange word to say a lot. Okay, category 7, issues in crisis management. The issues in crisis management communications 7A is a program or actions to deal specifically with a public relations crisis or other event that has an extraordinary impact on the organization. 7B is public involvement approach, which is a specific activity or campaign to gain public input and buy-in on a transportation improvement or public policy changes. And then 7C is the public involvement approach. So it's the same as 7B, but this is one is with consultant and then one is without consultant. So that's the difference between those two. Category 8, graphic design. This one is near and dear to my heart, overseeing our graphics unit. The first one is logo, illustration, or infographics. Pretty straightforward. So for this, we are looking at a either a single logo, illustration, or infographics. And I know sometimes some of you have done like a winter weather series that was a series of infographics that were entered in this category as well. And then 8B is photo. So that's any photo taken by a DOT employee that supports a public relations objective. So that is the graphic design category. Next is website and technology. So we have website with a consultant, website without a consultant, and then the mobile web application. We did make a slight change to the mobile web application category this year, and that will include not just a new app, but if you've updated an app or promoted an app in a new way this year, we'll be looking at that. We know a lot of you have had apps for a while and are tinkering with them a little bit now, and so we want to give those an opportunity to be entered again. Moving on to social media. 2 social media categories: best use of a single social media platform. So that's Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, LinkedIn, or it might be a new platform. Like if you're using next door in a new and innovative way, this would be a category to put that. And then the best use of social media. Actually, I obviously didn't finish typing the sentence when I sent the presentation in. The best use of social media in a campaign is what that should say. This one is for a particular campaign that you're working on. So um, if you have a winter awareness and you're using social media as part of that campaign, so the 10A is sort of an overall platform, and 10B is how you use social media in a campaign. Moving on and looking at some of the rules here, much like Fight Club, no, we do talk about TransComm awards. The first rule is not, don't talk about Fight Club, but the first rule is please read the rules. I am more than happy to answer any questions you have, but we get a lot of questions, a lot of different folks in a lot of different states. So please read through the rules. Maggie has put together a wonderful document that will answer a lot of those questions up front. So if you'll look through that, and then if you still aren't sure, please don't hesitate to reach out. Submissions are due by Friday, May 28th, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For those of you who are not in Eastern Standard Time, you will need to set your clocks accordingly. You can upload everything to the portal, and Maggie's going to walk us through that here in a few minutes as to what that looks like. You get 6 entries in the different categories, only 1 entry per category. Now, sometimes when we're asked that, that doesn't mean you get 1 entry in the graphic design category, for example, where you could have 1 entry in the logo, and then you could have 1 entry in the photo, but you can't have 2 photo entries. So that's what we mean when we say 1 entry per category. We ask that you provide a 10-page PDF, and that 10 pages does include your title and closing slides. We know a lot of people create these slides in PowerPoint. We ask that you do convert it to a PDF. We've had to do this a few years back because we were having trouble with the PowerPoints in the portal. So please convert those to a PDF. If you don't convert it to a PDF, the administrator will do that for you. But what happens sometimes in that conversion is if you have linked material or any special effects in that presentation, they can get lost. And so then the judges aren't going to have links back to something that you felt was important for them to link to. So we ask that you do go ahead and convert it yourself, and that you then go back and check the links once you've converted that to the PDF form to make sure that those links all came through, so that the judges have all the materials that you want them to have when they are judging. And of course, if you have any questions, my contact name is going to be up there again at the end. So if you don't get it jotted down now, you can do that in a few minutes. And I know it's up on the website as well. A few more rules and backgrounds here. We do ask that we have consultants sometimes. We know you're working with them, and we have categories for that. But you as the state DOT have to be the one submitting your entries. So even if you're working with a consultant, and you guys can work together on putting your application in for these, but make sure that it comes from a representative from within the DOT. The entries into the individual awards categories don't count towards the 6 entries that a state can enter in the other ones. So those are additional. And then again, if you have questions about, is this in the right category? We're happy to talk that through to you. You can't enter the category you won last year. It's because part of the winning experience is getting to judge that category the following year. So just make sure you're not entering into a category that you're already judging. And I know if your state's like ours, we have different people who may be submitting entries. So just make sure that you're communicating with everybody in your department to know who's submitting what and what you won last year, so where you're not eligible to enter this year. Eligible projects should have been completed, or at least bulk of it in progress, from May 1st, 2020 to May 1st, 2021. Moving on to the next slide here, with and without a consultant, Again, talked about that really briefly earlier, but without a consultant means it was all in-house. And again, that includes paid or unpaid production, concept development, anything like that. In the judges may, we occasionally will have a judge say, hey, we have this entry sort of like the old Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other. If they have an entry that feels a little out of place, they may contact us and then we'll get in touch with the state and say, hey, you entered in this category, but we actually think it's a better fit over here. Are you okay with that? Or was there a reason you entered it here? So we're not going to do that without having talked to you, but just know that that may be something we're going to come back to just to make sure it helps our judges, make sure they're comparing apples to apples, and it puts you in the strongest position to really showcase the work that you did and make sure that's in the right category. Only one entry per state within each category. We talked about that a little bit. We do have the right to if you enter more than two, that they'll both be disqualified. But we'll probably call you and just say, I'm not sure if you realize somebody else must have entered into the same category. Which of the two do you want to actually have as your entry? On that end, when we get to that judging, that's a lot of time and effort by your colleagues. So we just really ask that you are working together within your state and coordinating this up front to make sure that that's not happening and that we're not spending a lot of time trying to track that down. This one also sounds harsh, and I always, every year, I'm like, I should really soften that language, but don't enter more than 6, because if you do, then we're going to have to track you down and say, you only get 6 entries, you sent in 7, which one do you want to disqualify? So please don't put us in that position, because again, it's just, it's more legwork on this end. And so thank you, we appreciate your cooperation. So the entry form in PowerPoint, you get 500 words on the entry portal, and then you get your 10 slides. So the quantify. Strategic planning is one of the judging criteria. We're actually going to go through those specifically in a minute, but talk about how you decided to do what it is that you did. How did you come to that decision? Talk about ways that it's creative or innovative, or sometimes you're doing something that it's like, yeah, we know that this is it's hard to talk about how you were creative if you're entering a news release, but maybe if you took a different angle, or maybe part of the strategic planning was you decided that the old school method was the best method, but this is why we came to that decision. So talk about those things, and then put your results into context. We talk about this all the time. Some states have massive populations, and so they're going to have tens of thousands of hits on something that they put on social media. Whereas if you're in a smaller state and you just don't have the population where you're going to get the same number of hits. So by putting it into context, this received 5 times more social media hits than anything that we've ever done before, things like that. So giving it that context will help them see that this was highly effective for you. Your numbers shouldn't have to compete with the numbers of a state that has a greater population. But if it really upped the game for you and what you normally do, that's the kind of context that we're looking for. We always say the photos and graphics dazzle, but data wins the prize. It really is those quantifying numbers, the results of it. These are very results-driven judging criteria that we're going to talk about. And then just, again, make sure your links work, and especially as you're converting to the PDF, make sure that works. I'm not going to get into, I'm going to move on to judging criteria here, because that's kind of covered. These are the 5 questions that the judges are asked when they are judging your entry. So I always like to work backwards. Just start with these in mind. When we put together our entries here in Michigan, I will often give this judging criteria and show our material, what we write up in the portal and the PowerPoint, to somebody that hasn't been involved, and then say, are you able to answer these questions with this material that I have provided you. And that's a good way to get some outside perspective on it before you even enter. So that's one of the ways we do it. So those are out there. Those are also available on the guidelines. We put the judging criteria there so you know exactly what it is that you're being measured on. The judging process, like we said, last year's winning state in each category is going to be judging this year's entries. 3-member panel, they can all be from within the DOT. In the past, we tried to get outside perspectives or consultants. And if you have folks that you work with like that who are willing to be a part of your judging panel, that would be great, but they don't have to be. We found that sometimes it was hard to round up folks who were outside the department. So it is okay if they're all from within the DOT as far as judging goes. And we do ask that each judge provides comments on the entry. So this is why it's nice if you can have your judges, if we're judging news releases, if the judges are people who do news releases, it's nice because they can provide helpful comments and feedback. For us, that's a huge part of this program, is to get that feedback of what worked and maybe what didn't work in something that we've put together. Our graphic designers we get when we win in the graphic design category. So it's very, very helpful. Comments need to be provided, and that's a really helpful part of this. So I just really thoughtful comments, constructive comments that are going to help people build on campaigns for the future. The individual awards, as I mentioned, these don't count towards your 6 entries. You can enter as many in these categories as you'd like. The Spirit of TransComm Award is non-supervisory staff members. The TransComm Vanguard Award is for those who are new to transportation communications. The Founder Award is for somebody who's had long-term impacts on TransComm. And then Public Relations Professional of the Year, and then any kind of special recognition. These aren't all always given, but we know a lot of folks have been doing some great work this year under extreme circumstances, so we really hope that you will think about who within your organization might be good candidates for these awards. A few final tips here. Again, you get those 500 words per each of the questions that you're asked in that portal. You know, push that content. Tell your story, kind of how you came about deciding the approach that you were going to take. Back that up with numbers, and let folks know again how those numbers, why they're important, and why they mean a lot to your DOT and your area. And just make the most of those visuals, those 10 slides that you have. You know, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So sometimes, you know, having the right photo that helps give us a glimpse of what maybe that event was like or what you've had going on can be very, very helpful. And like I said, with all of that, if you have any questions for me, I am more than happy to walk you through the process, especially if you're new. Maggie is about to walk us through the portal process. So we ask if you have questions about what category should this go in, is this entry eligible? Those are the kind of questions that I get. Maggie tends to get I can't get into the portal, I'm having trouble loading my PDF, those kind of questions. But if you want to be safe, you can send it to both her and I, and she and I will be in regular contact deciding who's going to answer what and make sure that those questions get answered. So thank you all. We look forward to a really great year because we know that in the midst of everything going on, our need to communicate has been even more important than ever. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Maggie, and she's going to walk us through the portal.
Thank you, Dawn. Okay, I keep wanting to ask if you can see my screen, but I just went through Dawn's presentation, so you can, most likely. Okay, so we know the categories, we know what we want to enter, now what do we do? So I highly recommend you go to the communications.transportation.org site. This is the TransComm site. the committee site, where you can find all sorts of information. But the skills contest is over here on the sidebar, the last item. Click that. And here you can read all about what the competition is. You can see over here previous year's winners. So what you can actually do, and we don't have to do this now, but you can click and see who won last year. Now, there's another document that will show this, but whoever won last year gets to judge that category this year. Dawn mentioned that before, and we will be reaching out to your communications directors, your TransComm members, to ask them who their panel is going to be to judge these. So for example, let's see, Dawn's team is going to have to be prepared to judge the Category 5 video production internal. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to go back. So once you're on the skills page here, you can see down on this last paragraph, click here for information on the competition. This is the document that Dawn had just talked about that we put together. So this document will have all of the rules that Dawn discussed. Let me go in here for just a second, as well as her contact information and the judging criteria and all those categories she talked about, as well as judging states. So there's one more place you can see who's going to be judging that category. That also, as Dawn said, means you cannot enter that category if your state won last year, because you'd probably award yourself the win. So back to the page here. So that's here. Click here for information on the 2021 competition. Register now for a webinar. You're already here. You're all set. I'm going to put the recording of the webinar here, as well as under our professional development tab, where all of our webinars sit. So if you have other people on your team that are going to be in charge of nominating things, have them check this out. When you're ready to begin your nominations, click here. So it takes you to this. That is one big logo. But if you have ever submitted a nomination for either the Skills Awards, the America's Transportation Awards, I doubt any of you on this call, but maybe the TISMO Awards that the NOCOE does, the National Operations Center of Excellence at AASHTO, we all use the same portal. So if you've ever done that before, you will already be set to log in. However, if you have not, no problem. You don't have to be a certain person to log in. So anybody can have a login here. So fill out the right side of the page and register. Now, below you'll see all of those rules that Dawn talked about, but they're going to be inside this portal too. So, okay, log in. Okay, the Skills Awards. So this is the page you're going to see. You can hit on the side here or up here, My Projects. If you were to go to that, you would see any that you've started. You do not have to complete a project in order for it to save. You can get one started and come back to it. So when you log in, if you hit My Projects, you'll see all the ones you started. Otherwise, I don't have any current ones in the system, so you'll be taken to new projects. So the first thing you're asked to do is to select the category. That's what Dawn mentioned. Say I want to do an Excel award, and then from there, with a consultant. I'm just noticing now it says or PowerPoint entry. I will delete that because, as Dawn said, it has to be a PDF. Okay, so I have my category selected. Here again is the judging criteria, just to let you know how judges are going to score you. Then the easy stuff, title of entry, contact. Now, contact does not have to be your communications director. I want here, and Dawn wants here, the person we contact should we have an issue with your nomination. Say, as Dawn said, two different people from the same state nominated a photo. So what we're going to want to do is get in touch with you. So put the contact name, your name, or whoever you want us to talk to if something were to happen. Organization, which is your DOT. Then your title. This, not all of this is mandatory, so don't worry about that, but we want your phone number. Email address. Okay, presentation or supporting documents. That's where you're going to add your PDF. Like Dawn said, we had some really tough years where we were having a file size issue with PowerPoint. And unfortunately, not super unfortunately. It took me about 2 days to make sure everything was converted and converted with all of the linked pieces. That was tough. But what it does is it slows down our judges. So we want to make sure that's attached. Video or audio files, if you are entering a video category or a podcast, you can link to it in the presentation or do both, or put it in the video or audio file slot here, attach that file, and also have it linked in your PowerPoint or your PDF. That's fine too. Here's where we ask you some of the things you're going to be judged on. So you don't have to use all of these words. A lot of times people let the PDFs really do much of the talking, but I suggest you use this and really go back to the judging criteria. The situation, goals, and objectives. As Dawn said, what was the issue? And what did you hope to accomplish at the beginning of that campaign? I think that's the piece that's left out the most. People do not say what they meant to do in the beginning, which hinders the measurement of it. As Dawn said, small states are not competing against big states. It's not the biggest numbers, it's what impact were you hoping to have? And then at the end, we can see if you did it. Without that piece in the beginning, it's very hard to judge. Target audience, we want to know who you're trying to reach. And so typically this is one that people have the answer for, which is great. Who are you looking to influence or reach or talk to or gain support from? Measurable results, Dawn can attest to this. This is the toughest. We in our field are doing more and more every day to get to be able to quantify the work that we do. Not easy. And there's factors outside of our control. And it can be tough in the beginning of a campaign to figure out what you want to do to see if you've met it. But I see it more and more each year. People are doing that, which is good because what you can, measure, you can, monitor. So we highly recommend whatever it is. You don't have to have a book full of numbers of data, but we want to see how many people engaged with your post, if it's a social media thing, how many people attended your event versus what you had wanted or expected. How far was that reach of that news release? How many people covered what you had written about? Or how many people have read that blog post that you posted? And I know that some things are easier to quantify than others, and that doesn't necessarily, and we all know that doesn't translate to success all the time, but measure what you can. And again, it doesn't mean bigger numbers get bigger scores. That's not true at all. We want to see the impact for where you are. So that is essentially the page. It's not too much. You have Dawn's information over here, but I will tell you, you can find mine on the TransComm website, communications.transportation.org. Reach out to Dawn for category or questions of that nature, and reach out to me with any technical issues you have. But we are really excited about this competition. I know last year was very strange for all of us, and the kind of work we did was different. But to me, that means you're doing so much more than you have before and been forced to get creative, more so than usual. So we're excited to see what these categories are, and we are going to be in touch with the judges too to start setting up those panels soon. So that is the portal. And again, you can start it and hit save and come back to it. And when you're ready, just hit finalize. Just make sure you click on everything you can, and those PDFs are very, very important. That's all I've got on the portal.
Thank you so much, Dawn and Maggie. We will now take any questions you may have. Just type them into the questions box if you haven't already.
I did get one question. Dawn, this is for you. Maryland did an electronic ribbon cutting for a transportation event. Which category should we compete in?
Yes, the virtual questions shall begin, huh? I think the virtual ribbon cutting, that's going to be a transportation event, just like a regular ribbon cutting would be. And obviously your strategic planning, you're going to want to talk about the virtual component of it. My guess is you're probably going to be competing against some other virtual events because I know we all did a lot of those this year. So I'm sorry, I'm going through my pages right now. I see that as being special events category 4A, transportation events, because it was a ribbon cutting. You just delivered it in a little different method than usual.
Great. Our next question, I think, is for me. What's the plan for this year's TransComm meeting? Do we know timing? Yes, the plan this year is to go virtual. We are discussing within the steering committee whether to do a full TransComm meeting, which are days of sessions. Obviously, we're all experiencing a little Zoom fatigue, and the best part about TransComm is getting together and having those kind of impromptu conversations. Oh, I saw that you're doing that. Can you come talk to me about that program and how you instituted it and how I can do it in my state? Those happen less in a virtual setting. But last year, I wasn't there, unfortunately, but I hear it went really, really well, the light version of a virtual meeting for TransComm. So we're planning that. I can tell you it will be in September. We haven't solidified the dates yet, but I can tell you, I know we will have some programming. We will definitely have the Skills Awards presentation like we did last year. And we will have the Call of the States, which is my favorite part of the whole meeting, to hear what everybody wants to talk about, brag about from their states from the last year. So count on a virtual September meeting. How big and robust the program is to be continued. I don't have any more questions as of right now. I'm trying to think of anything else you guys should know. I think just like with the America's Transportation, I'm going to do a quick plug. The America's Transportation Awards are due next Friday, but it's the same kind of thing about telling a story, and we tend to get those stories for this awards program, for the Skills Awards. So you guys are all storytellers anyway, so it comes naturally to you. But that measurement up front, I'm really stressing people highlight the goals. That is exact, and it's not the measurement itself at the end that tends to be the issue. It's identifying whether or not you hit your goals. So that means it has to be stated up front. So make sure to do that in your nomination. Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any, but again, Marshall or Dawn and I are available anytime you need us via email. Mine is up on the site. I think Dawn's is too, but also she had it in her presentation. Hold on, I might be able to pull up. There we go. Here's our contact info if you need anything at all. So Marshall, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Okay, thanks so much. Once again, Maggie and Dawn, that will wrap it up for today's webinar. Please don't hesitate to reach out to, as Maggie just said, to Dawn with any programmatic questions or Maggie with any technical or portal issues. Today's webinar has been recorded, and we'll post a link at communications.transportation.org within a day or so. We will have information on the May edition of the TransComm webinar series soon, so be sure to look for an email announcement or check back at the TransComm website. On behalf of TransComm and Chairman Gutierrez Scacchetti, I want to thank today's presenters, and I also want to thank each of you for tuning in and contributing to this session. We look forward to seeing all of your nominations and wish you all luck.